Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Cunningham Township Board for Monday, August 12th, 2024. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu.
Here.
Mr. Evans.
Here.
Ms. Hersey. Ms. Colasetti.
Here.
Ms. Bishop. Ms. Wilkin. Mr. Quisenberry.
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here.
Supervisor Chenoweth.
Present.
Assessor Owana.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the May 20th, 2024 meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Moved by Mary Alice. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by James. Any substantial corrections? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay. Do we have any presentations scheduled? None that I know of. And it looks like we have no public participation. We'll move on to committee to verify bills.
Greetings. This last month, which represents July, in the town fund we had $85,321.94 in expenditures. In the general assistance fund, we had $280,812.48 in expenditures. The total expenditures were $365,134.42. I'll go over the supervisor's memo in a minute. You do have the bills in the packet. And because these were prepared while I was out, the one thing I just, when I reviewed them, is that there's a $38.50 accidental charge to Jimmy John's on 7/25, so I'm investigating what that charge is about. But I didn't find anything else of concern when I was looking through it.
Any questions? Mary Alice.
Danielle, I'm assuming this is from yours and not the assessor's office, but there are $12,000 to $1,000 items from Meyer. I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Sure. Yeah, in the supervisor's memo, it's at the very bottom, but we talk about our immigrant services grant through SMAS. It's the Municipal Mayor's Organization, and we held a food sharing event where we had about 125 qualifying families sign up for $200 in assistance. They got a $100 gift card from Myers, and they got a $100 gift card from Salt and Light. So all the qualifying families got the $200, and they were at Myers. I purchased them personally, and they were sold in 10 gift card packs. So it was $1,000 per pack of gift cards.
And you said that was funded by a grant?
Yeah, it's 100% funded by a SMAS grant, which is the Municipal Mayor's Council. It was actually a pass-through grant with the city of Urbana in partnership with the city. And we had funds at the end of the year, and we, based on what we saw were the demands, food assistance was the highest demand and the most popular, so we went ahead and had that end of year event to spend on that grant, which we did.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Is there a motion to approve? Go ahead.
One thing I did want to ask about was there's an item under admin services for Frank Calabrese, professional services, GIS, $6,000. Could we get a little more info on that?
Yep, so that was actually a charge that was supposed to be taken care of in fiscal year 24, but due to some issues with having the check mailed and delivered appropriately, it ended up being that we had to take care of that in fiscal year 25. And what Frank is doing for us is making maps specifically of our jurisdiction. These maps include, but are not limited to, large maps of all of the 20-plus neighborhoods that we have in Urbana, not by subdivision neighborhoods, by the way that we characterize them. Maps of the, how do I explain this? The leading sections of pins for our township. So our township's pins all start with 91, 92, and 93. So having maps created of that, having maps created of the individual wards that we have, and then also having large maps that outline our jurisdiction. The total cost of all of that is $6,000. I'll have those maps for you once they're actually printed, but of course they're still in construction at the moment.
Is that part of that, the remapping that we've done with changing the wards?
That will include any updates, yes. We are working off of the county's most recent GIS system.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve the bills?
I'll move approval of the bills.
Second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
That motion passes. Moving on to reports of officers.
So the summer is always a busy month. It seems like a slow month in a college town, but for low-income families and for those who serve them, it's a very busy month. We have been seeing record numbers of general assistance and rental assistance applications. We track them pretty carefully and provide that. In general assistance, we had 52 new applications. That may be a record in terms of 1 month, up from 34 the month before. We have 93 active. It's not as high as during COVID, but it's getting there. Rental assistance, we've been having 73 last month, 73, in June, 73 in July. Still a large number of rental assistance with both, and when we get to the budget, what we've tried to do is actually trim kind of all less, trim down on legal, trim down on supplies, trim down and try to keep our assistance high. So you'll see that in the proposed budget that we actually, based on what we're seeing, we're anticipating record numbers of assistance for this next year, and we budgeted for it. That said, we do have a balanced budget we're proposing at this time. And then I would say, and this happens every year, but it seemed to happen a little bit earlier than usual, which is that we have 16 families on our wait list for families. At the time of this memo, actually, we didn't have clarity on it, so I clarified today with the staff. So we have 16 on the wait list. We had 9 families referred last month, including 27 children. So we're trying to address that because we have a hotel program. The smaller families, we can sometimes move them in. We've also been at the table in conversations with Regional Office of Education and the Community Schools Foundation. And because a lot of, they're seeing an increase in homeless families in Unit 4 schools as well. And so there's some discussion of collaboration with United Way, RPC, ROE, Community Schools Foundation, and us to see if we can increase our capacity. But right now, we are keeping at the capacity we're at in the budget that's proposed. Honestly, most of the need right now is really in Champaign. So we want to hope that they prioritize that need and can support that work. We do have, the wait list was updated to, it says 15 here, 16 as of today. With utility assistance, you'll see we had 55 households served in July, 51 in June. These are very large numbers. So can continue to see an increase there. We have typically not funded utility assistance through the levy. We've funded it through grants and angel donor, but you'll see in the budget there's some utility assistance that's coming from the levy because it's such an important part of keeping people in housing. If the utilities is shut off, then it's possible that they will need to move. So it's a form of, it's a pressure on homelessness. With food support, you'll see it's been about the same June and July. They've been pretty comparable months in terms of food demand. If you're ever up on Wednesday on North Lincoln Avenue, you'll see that the Hope Center food pantry is all the way down Lincoln Avenue. I mean, it's many blocks. So, I think that we, as a community, we sit at Healthy Champaign County and just trying to and obviously I serve on the public health board as a matter. Both supervisors serve on the board. So we're having conversations about how we can address food insecurity. Solidarity Gardens is going really well. And I think, one of the ways we try to address food insecurity is to distribute fresh produce, also give out free plots. I'm really surprised at how popular that program has been, but we had all 53 plots filled. Last year we only had 10. So I'm hoping that we could look at leverage points like that, where we can provide additional support and services so that people can grow their own food and access food. And then I mentioned the Immigrant Food Assistance gift card event. We did the gift card that was on the last supervisor's memo, and then the pickup was this. We had over 100 households pick up their gift cards. We have a few more. I think it's about 25 left to give out. We also, there aren't photos from here, but I know the mayor attended our Aspen Court garden raising event. That is the garden that kind of in the neighborhood that sits behind the Learman Avenue garden. So we're trying to revive with some of the leadership who are involved in the Learman Avenue garden, revive a garden at that location based on their request. So we had a really great event with, we fed 100 people. We had Urbana from Urbana Park District, Tool Lending Library. We did, we dug up soil. We got written permission from Aspen Court to actually start a garden behind the office. And we were able to dig up soil and do some harvesting of zucchinis. And there were a lot of kids at the event. And so we were able to teach them some around about gardening and tilling the soil and taking care of their plants. Tommy, who's really championed that garden, and a lot of credit should go to him on this, has also been creating pocket gardens. And so if you're ever in the Aspen Court area, you'll see beautiful little pocket gardens all around in front of people's doorways. And so we've been trying to support that effort, anything that they need. Earlier he asked for compost, and through Solidarity Gardens, we were able to provide a compost delivery. We've been providing tools and logistical support. We just need support to move the shed, which used to be at Learman Garden. It's quite a large item, so hopefully able to, we have a question into Public Works to see if we can get that shed moved, but it was a great event, and we're looking to do additional events going into the fall, especially around mobile DMV. So you'll see some events around making sure that licenses and IDs and registrations are available. We did put in a grant to SMAS. It's a renewal grant through the city of Champaign this year, and it was $305,000 that we submitted. For the bulk of that is actually for winter shelter. It's to allow us to do what we did last year. We happened to have some excess funds, and we were able to use some grant funds for that, but that grant was capped this year, so we don't have those funds. So basically, we'd like to be able to move folks with income out of strides in the winter months and do a 6-month move to housing with 20 individuals. So I'm hopeful that we'll get that funding. The other pieces had to do with mobile DMV events and supporting immigrants. Venezuelans have until April to apply for temporary protected status. It's a handful of hundreds of dollars, but if you don't have a handful of hundreds of dollars and some technical assistance, you can lose the opportunity. So we did put in that grant to help 100 Venezuelans locally apply for temporary protected status and work permits. And I think that will help the local economy, having access to labor, and it would help obviously help the families as well to have that. So I'm hopeful, cross your fingers, that that grant comes in. If not, we're gonna be looking for other sources for the winter sheltering expansion. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Ivana? Unfinished business. Move on to new business. We have Resolution T 2024-08-004R, which is a resolution certifying 2 questions adopted at the 2024 annual town meeting for the November 5th, 2024 general election. Darcy?
So some of you may recall back in 2022, we had a very similar thing. On March 1st of 2024, a resident filed 2 petitions with the clerk's office to place 2 advisory referenda questions of public policy on the agenda at the annual town board meeting. The annual town board meeting is not a meeting of the Cunningham Township Board. It's a meeting of the electorate of Cunningham Township, so registered voters of the township. That meeting occurred on April 9th, 2024. At that meeting, both of those referendum advisory questions passed with a majority. That being said, now it is the duty of the town board to certify these referendum advisory questions to be placed on the ballot. And it is my understanding that it is a shall certify, that it is not, it's a formality. It's not really something that is up for discussion or debate. It is just a formality that must be done. And then following passage, it will be filed with the county clerk's office this week so that it can appear on the ballot as directed by the electorate from April. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Any questions for Darcy? Chris?
Darcy, could you remind the good boys and girls at home that what the vote counts were on the questions?
Sure. So for the first referendum advisory question, which was, shall the city of Urbana adopt a policy whereby the city shall not invest in any fossil fuel company or any subsidiary, affiliate, or parent of any fossil fuel company? It passed with 83 affirmative votes to 29 negative votes. The second referendum advisory question, shall the United States federal government and subordinate divisions stop giving military funding to Israel, which currently costs taxpayers $3.8 billion a year, given Israel's global recognition as an apartheid regime with a track record of human rights violations? And that advisory question passed with 76 affirmative votes to 40 negative votes.
James?
Do we have legal advice on whether the certification, I mean, I'd like to understand why we vote on it if we don't have a choice.
Because you are the governing body of the township, therefore you have to certify all referendum advisory questions to be filed on behalf of this governing body for the ballot.
Okay, I get that, but do we have legal advice that there's not an option here? Who provided the legal advice?
Well, 2 years ago, that would have been the township officials of Illinois, and it is unchanged from 2 years ago.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mary Alice?
So just to expand a little bit on what James was asking, the process here tonight is to say whether or not we think that the meeting was appropriately run. No, that's not. So
No, your duty tonight is to certify the outcome of the meeting that already occurred.
okay.
Any other questions? James?
That's a pretty distinctive way to say it there, because saying that we are certifying the outcome of the meeting is different from certifying the questions to be put on the ballot.
Your duty at this time is simply an administrative one. It is not to judicially decide. I apologize if I implied that it was.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion? This item, Jaya?
We have a duty to perform. I'm sorry, I had to get to the right part of the agenda, and I think it's important for folks to keep that in mind. It sounds like we don't have a choice. So I'll move Resolution T 2024-08-004R, resolution certifying 2 questions adopted at the annual 2024 annual town meeting for the November 5th, 2024 general election.
I'll second.
Discussion? James?
Yeah, I will be voting to approve this because, as I understand it, what I'm voting to do is to say the meeting was conducted and this was the outcome. That's what happened, and so that's why we'll be supporting it.
Any other discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
That motion passes. Next item is ordinance T 2024-08-001, an ordinance approving the annual budget and appropriation ordinance fiscal year 2023-2024 amended.
So we've had to do this every year since the pandemic, partly because it's very difficult to predict what our budgets will look like. But the good news is that we've brought in a lot of additional grant monies that weren't always anticipated. So you'll be, as we grow, you'll be doing this each year, which is that if it's over 10%, we bring you an amended budget. The amended budget before you is the actuals from last year. So although it is unaudited, our audit is conducted in September or October. It's close to what it will be. And so we bring you the actual numbers at this time. And yeah, so I'm happy to answer any questions. What we're asking, and I sent these in email as well, is for you to basically put the amended budget on file, and then it is on file for 30 days. The clerk will be calling a public hearing. I've asked for that to be on September 16th to give us the full 30 days, because 4 weeks is only 28 days. And then you will vote to approve the ordinance, or at least take a vote on the ordinance at that time. Happy to answer any questions. We're looking at amended, the appropriation ordinance that says amended at the top, and the budget that says amendment at the top, and you have both of them in front of you in print.
There's an amended ordinance that says version 1. Is that the correct one?
Yeah, it says version 1. Because there may be changes that happen, and so you'll see the next one would be version 2 or be an update.
Okay.
I am still looking at the balance sheet, so typically at the end of the year, we look closely at the balance sheet to make sure that it's accurate. So that would be where I would see changes happening.
Questions on the amended budget? Mary Alice.
Danielle, would you be able to summarize for everybody kind of the main highlights that have been amended from the budget that was passed last year?
Yeah, so I think the primary areas, and I've kind of anticipated this moment by letting you all know in the supervisor's memo that general assistance came under, rental assistance was far, far over, utility assistance was off the chain. I think that's a technical term. I think we did receive a significantly more in interest income than expected. We received more in SSI reimbursements than expected. We received about double personal property tax than expected. So we did have some income increases in addition to the expenses. But generally speaking, as you'll see, we still had a surplus at the end of the year. You can look at total town fund net income. That gives you a sense, and then the GA fund net income, and then the total. So we were able to come under budget for this amended budget. And we were running somewhat of a surplus. Part of that is we ran a surplus in anticipation of an office move, so we're kind of preparing ourselves for that possibility. But those are the big areas for us. You'll see, utility assistance, I'll just point out, was $148,000, which is pretty significant compared to where we thought we would be. I don't know, Ivana, if you wanted to share anything in terms of budget changes.
Sure I can, but I don't have anything to add for the amended budget specifically.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Do you need a motion to put it on file?
We need a motion to put this on file.
I'll move that this is placed on file for 30 days.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Chandra. Any further discussion?
Is that for both of these items, or are we taking them one at a time?
Just 08001, the amended budget.
Okay.
Yeah, so a budget is an attachment to the ordinance, so you're basically putting the budget on file. But you're not moving the ordinance at this time.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. Last item of new business is ordinance T 2024-08-002, an ordinance approving the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for fiscal year 2024 through 2025.
Yeah, so you'll see the ordinance in front of you with the estimated balance and then the cash and expenses and the final balance. That's the required ordinance. I tried to make the budget really simple this year so that it was easy to view and see. I'll just give a couple of budget highlights. I will share from the GA fund, although it is the sole discretion of the supervisor, but the supervisor's fund in particular, I did want to, you'll see under salaries, I've added a deputy supervisor. I've been clocking 50 hours a week since February in work. I've actually been keeping track of my hours in my calendar because it's been excessive. We have 20 staff members. We have a budget of $4.7 million. I came in with 3 staff members and a budget of 1.2. So I'm at a point where I'm going to need some support. So I'd like to hire a deputy supervisor. You will see a half-time administrative assistant. That person is already hired. They were hired last November with some additional dollars. Partly because of the number and volume of grants that came in. They do a lot of the processing and grants tracking. So they're half paid through supervisor and half paid through general assistants because they do a lot of administrative support around facilities and payroll. You'll see some increases in terms of a second office. So we have expanded. We are renting half approximately of the Beckett Law Office. So we've expanded. That lease came to you, and that is going well. And so we do have some additional expenses. We did, in the lease that you approved, it allowed me to add space. And so we went ahead and added space as well. We kind of doubled what we were originally leasing for. And so we wanted to make sure there was sufficient office. You'll see additional computers, some utility, those kind of things. You will see last year we went under budget on legal, which was great because we've had $100,000 legal years with the Carl case. Last year was about $25,000. So, but we had budgeted much more. So some of the places we still have a balanced budget with the town fund. Partly thanks to the assessor, we met and talked about pulling back on some of the assessor and some of the supervisor's sides around some of the administrative fees. So you'll see that our balanced budget for the town fund that we're estimating a surplus of $23,000 for the year. And so we've been able to pull out some of the grants line items, some legal line items, some intern line items. We have fewer interns, more staff. We've been able to have grants cover some of our costs, so you'll actually see adjust grant paid under some of the items, and where we were able to distribute direct and indirect costs to grants, you'll see that we've been able to cover some of our costs that way. So essentially, that's what the highlights of the supervisor's fund. There's not a whole lot that's changed other than that, the biggest addition is another FTE. Under the GA fund, there's significant changes, partly because of the number of grants that we have coming in this year. So most of the GA fund beyond the levy, all of the GA fund beyond the levy is grant funded. That's the short version of the story. But we were able to see some savings in terms of the legal. If you go to the program, which is where the largest increases are from last year's budget, essentially we're anticipating 80 general assistance cases at 420, which is the current monthly amount, and TANF will be going up to 440. And the township supervisors of Illinois encourage townships to peg general assistance to TANF levels. That's pretty typical. So it'll be going up to 440. So we plan on going up to 440 January 1st. We typically start that increase with the new year with the 80 folks. We'll continue our housing allowances, which has honestly been one of the most one of the best and cheapest programs that we have, which is that we pay people subsidized housing rent for folks especially who have mental health issues or other issues that make it difficult for them to stay housed. So they don't receive general assistance because they don't participate in the programming, but we want to keep them housed, so we pay their housing allowance. And that has been a great program. Rental assistance, that was the area where if you look at actuals and proposed, we're trying to basically stay at what we spent this year. I'm afraid to cut that because of what we've seen. So that is a pretty significant expansion. If you look at the history of our rental assistance program, that said, you'll see that we're still at a balanced budget. So hoping that that will go well. There's a tiny portion of that, I think, not tiny, but comparatively small portion that comes from Urbana ARPA. The rest comes from the levy. So we will need to, after the ARPA funds are expended, consider how to pull back from that piece. Emergency housing hotels is all grant funded. There is significant outside services, and that includes our winter shelter will be run by a contracted service. It won't be run by our staff. We don't have enough staff to do that. So I'm in conversation with several different organizations that could provide that service. You'll see, let's see, utility assistance is one of those areas. If we want to have a balanced budget, we cut from basically 150 to 80. We could make that up with additional angel donor requests. I could also use the rest of the 23,000. I went back and forth quite a few times. You will see that last year we ran a surplus. Certainly we need some of that for our move, but not all of it. So we could go back up and increase the utility assistance. We have 30 days to think about that. But right now it's at 80,000. Angel donor expenses always match how much we plan on bringing in, so they are pegged to that. Same thing with Solidarity Gardens. The intern and volunteer program this year, we've decided that we want to pay minimum wage for our interns. It's something we've wanted to do for a long time, and we've seen less and less folks who are our interns. For example, our social work interns are required to pay. They receive no payment usually, but they are required to pay their tuition. So they're working second and third jobs, and there's a lot of stress. And so I would say I've seen the stress of our interns go up over the last 2 years. So we are now doing, we'll be having fewer intern hours, but be able to pay the minimum wage. I'm happy about that. And included in that line item is also our peer leaders program. So it'll be the same thing, minimum wage. There are similar programs, but they're administered differently. Yeah, and then we continue to have some event expenses. So our general assistance fund, there's a couple of big rocks, but I think through, primarily through making sure that we bring in additional grant funding, we were able to get to a balanced budget and do some significant increases. There's not a whole lot of one-time grant money in here, which makes me happy. It's mostly recurring expenses as long as the state continues to play ball, which, right now I'm lucky to live in Illinois. But I'm happy to say that we did spend through Urbana ARPA dollars faster. I think that was prudent in part because then I'd like to get to more sustainable, less one-time funds so that we get a picture of what our financial needs are. So I'm feeling good about this budget, but I am certainly happy to take input. Even though the GA budget is my sole discretion, you do know your constituents well, and if there are things or needs that are coming up that you think I need to pay attention to in setting the general assistance budget, I'd certainly be happy to hear from you. And I know I oftentimes do, so thank you for that. That's all that I had in terms of the budget.
Any questions? Is there a motion, and is this to put the budget on file as well?
Yes, it is.
So is there a motion to put the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget on file for 30 days?
I will move.
Second?
Second.
Moved by James, seconded by Mary Alice. Discussion. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes. And with no further business before this board, we'll stand adjourned.
Thank you.